Oh no, I've effed up my paint job. Now what? Thoughts? This is HK7335. I'm here to help you make epic Mandalorian cosplay with ease. This happens every now and then. You go to paint your helmet and you start doing some things and it just doesn't come out right and you're not happy with the way it looks. It could be a number of reasons why you might want to redo it, but that can be kind of daunting because painting a helmet is no small deal. So what do? You know, what happened to me was I was actually weathering and painting this helmet on a live stream and got a little crazy in here with the damage, way more than I wanted. Plus our stencils weren't working. So I was like, all right, this is a redo. I already had all this area masked off, so none of this has really been touched. And the cheeks, which are also white, actually came out okay, and I'm going to leave them the way they are. So that's the first thing, you know. Don't panic. Assess the situation. See how bad it really is. Because it may look really terrible at first, but when you look at it, you're like, you know, this isn't really so bad. Maybe I don't have to do the whole thing. I'm going to go ahead and do both halves of the dome on this helmet because I want them to feel like they were all done at the same time, right? This side isn't really that bad. I'm actually okay with it, but I'm going to redo it anyway because I want it to be consistent with this side. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to go ahead and guide coat this first, and we'll explain what the guide coat is for, and you'll see it in action as we sand. And then we're going to go ahead and get it really smooth and then put our primer on, and we'll determine what kind of metal effect we want to do after we primer. Okay, so it looks like our guide coat is dry. I'm going to just get this out of here carefully. And we're going to go ahead and wet sand it. We're going to start with 400 grit sandpaper. I like this stuff. It's super fine, wet or dry, waterproof sandpaper. And I'm going to start with 400 and I'm going to finish with 6. If I was going to just do this pure Beskar, I would probably go 8 or even 1,000 to really make it smooth. But 400 and 600 should be sufficient. All right, so I've gone ahead and already torn some pieces in the size that I need, but I'm going to make a couple of more because I like to put some around this stick here that's really good for getting into you know, the edges and corners and stuff like that. So let's go ahead and just make one of those real fast. If your paint's not super dry, you may need a lot more sandpaper because it's going to load up. But when the paint is really dry and not soft, it's going to be easier to sand. So we're just going to get the paper wet and we're just going to start sanding like this. So what's going to happen is you can see that guide coat is coming off. And where it comes off fastest is in the highest areas. And ultimately what we're going for is trying to get an even finish all over. Now, we do have some paint chips in here which we're going to have to sand past. And this is where, you know, it makes it a little more difficult to sand the paint smooth, but it's not impossible. So, feather out these paint chips because we can always re-chip in these same areas and it may end up looking pretty cool. With a Mando helmet, if it looks like you've done several paint jobs, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, maybe the helmet's been, Boba Fett's helmet got repainted, right? So, I can't use. Alright, so if I want to get into some of these tight spots, I'm going to use this guy. We'll go ahead and go around the ears here. You can use the edge, really get up against the corner. Now we're getting down into the primer, which this is black primer underneath this white paint because we did a black Beskar metal finish on it. And we're probably going to do that again. Although actually, no, we're actually going to go with a slightly lighter primer for this because I thought the black was a little too much for this area against the white. So it turned out the 400 wasn't really aggressive enough to deal with this situation, so I switched out to 180 grit, also waterproof sandpaper, and I'm using a sanding block. These things are great for holding your sandpaper. You can do a nice circular motion. You can even get into some of the corners with it. And using a 180 is a great starting point. It's not super coarse, so it's not going to tear up too much. Then you go back over it with the 400 and it'll smooth everything out. Wipe off the areas that you've been so you can see your progress. Okay, so obviously we still have a ways to go. We finished sanding our guide coat and we are ready to reprime this helmet. A couple of things I wanted to point out. First of all, not all of my masking survived. It's just paper though, covering up an area that I didn't want to paint. So I'm gonna just recover and remask that with just a new piece of paper. It'll take just a couple of minutes. Another thing to point out is that I had to start with 180 grit sandpaper because the 400 was just not aggressive enough to get this knocked down in a reasonable amount of time. So I sanded with 180 and then I went back over it with 400 all over. And notice that these edges are soft. This is like feathering, okay? So basically what this does is it makes a smooth transition between all the different layers of paint on here. There's at least 2 gray primers and 2 coats of black primer, and then actually 2 coats of white paint on top of that. And we've layered this all out so it's very smooth. The transitions are really nice, and we're going to go ahead and shoot this now with this Krylon 2-in-1. Now I like this because it's not as light as the regular sandable filler primer that I use. So this is actually going to make a very nice Beskar effect. So we're going to forego the black and just go with this. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to go ahead and mask this thing off, and then we're going to put it in the booth and shoot some primer on it. They are Gucci. We've got our primer coat on, and we're going to do one more quick wet sand. This one goes really fast, and the whole point of it is just to kind of knock down any little particulates that may have landed on the surface of the primer. But because we started out with a very smooth base, we're not going to have to do very much work, and we want to go super light. You could even do 1,000 grit or higher, 1,500 if you wanted to at this point, because you know, and that would be if you were going to do full metal and just, you know, no paint on top, then yeah, you'd want to go with the higher grit than what I'm going to go. Because I'm going to be painting this white and chipping it out, I'm going to go with 600, and that should give me a very good base level of smoothness. Plus I'm also going to, because I'm going to do my Beskar technique on here, I'm going to go ahead and hit this with the 4-0 steel wool after I do the 600 grit sandpaper. We're going to wet sand this. And we're going super light. I am like barely pushing, just enough to keep the paper on the surface of the helmet. Just barely touching it. I'm really just trying to knock down any particulates that may be on the surface, and will help this really smooth out when we go and polish it with the paper towels. We're going to polish first, and then we'll steel it. This is my process for Beskar. You want to do this while the primer is still pretty fresh, like within 5 to 6 hours of shooting it. I say the earlier the better. I like to do it within the first hour. I think that's the best because the primer is still soft enough where you can work it and really get a nice shine out of it. It's much harder to do, and the result is not nearly as good if the paint has had a chance to dry for any significant amount of time. Okay, you can see this is really starting to pick up a nice shine. And you know what? This represents about a half an hour of actual work. A lot of that was due to the fact that I went with a more aggressive sandpaper. It'll take you more time to mask than it will to actually do the work. So now this step, I think, is really kind of the key to this whole thing. I gotta stand up here because I need the leverage. But that is the steel wool. I think this steel wool imparts something, and really kind of, again, I'm just going super light. I'm going to just do this one side, and then we'll go ahead and put the graphite on so you can see the whole effect. Use this beauty blender to apply it. I like this thing because I can use this point to get up into the corners and along the seams. So yeah, you can see that this primer is giving us a very nice, almost an iron-like effect. It's not super dark. And what's great about this is that, you know, if I don't like this, I can go back and sand it some more. The primer is very forgiving. And you can go back and work with it until you get it to the level that you want it to be at. Always put the lid back on. This stuff is very fine powder and you don't want it to spill. Make sure when you're doing this that you wear your PPE. You want to have gloves on. Dust mask is highly recommended. You could probably go with a little bit more sanding, but I'm not looking for a mirror finish because, like I said, I'm going to be painting this, but I think that looks pretty remarkable. Quite reflective. I can see my face in there. And we'll go ahead and do the other side at another point. So that's it. Now it's ready for paint. Don't be daunted or afraid of having to repaint your helmet if it's not quite what you want it to be. Okay? Hey, if you made it all the way to the end of the video, I just want to say thanks for watching. If you got something out of it, let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Also, like and subscribe and click the notification bell so that you can get notified when new videos are released. I'm HK7335, and I'm here to help you make epic Mandalorian cosplay with ease. If you want to know more about me and what I do and how I do it, click on my link tree on my profile page. There you will find all the things about me, including the stuff I use on Amazon, all my social medias. You'll get a 3D print perfection guide and a free 3D model if you sign up for my email list, and you can also join my Facebook group so you can interact with me all the time, because I'm there a lot. So anyway, I just want to say again, this is HK7335. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys soon. Vote on!